All right, man. Welcome back. We were discussing Bill Maher and his use of the N-word. Now, my question to you is this: there's a train of thought out there that says that blacks and Black Americans only should be allowed to use the N-word. That it was a word used to be destructive. I can't even put into context how demeaning and hurtful the word was, and instead of letting it be a hurtful word, we turn it into something amongst us to take the sting away from it. In fact, our uncle, he said that growing up in the Jim Crow South, he was called nigga so much that he thought it was basically his name. Like it was like saying I'm black, I'm a nigga, and they called each other that because really same thing. It was called so much that basically I don't know how to put it in context, but that's just what they call each other. But today, with the globalization of hip hop music and particularly the black culture in general, every race now basically feels that they can use the N-word without there being any sort of repercussions. So how do you feel about that?
I'm very conflicted when it comes to that. I get the history behind it. I know the history behind it, of course. The connotations in which it's been used as a slur against people of color. However, I do feel that there is some legitimacy to the argument that if this word is so offensive to you and you're calling yourselves this, and someone uses the word in the proper context, which is most people today when they say my nigga, they're referring to it in the context of my brother, my friend. If someone uses it in the context of that, and let's say they're Mexican, let's say they're white, let's say they're Puerto Rican or something like that, how can you justifiably be angry and treat it as if they said nigger?
Because, and not to cut you off, I feel like...
No, that's the question I was posing to you.
But this is the reason. Blackish had an episode, right, where, what's the name? What's the main character name? Anthony?
Yeah, Anthony Anderson.
Anthony Anderson. And it was something to the effect of, when you see another black person somewhere that you normally don't see black people, you give them the head nod, like the, you know what I'm talking about. So, and it's kind of like a thing that black people know that, all right, brother, yeah, all right, cool. I can say, yo, what's up, my nigga? Because even though we didn't live in Jim Crow, we did grow up in the Deep South.
Yes.
We both dealt with racism.
Yes.
Our parents are alive and have spoken to us about the massive racism they dealt with. And just being black in America means that unless you're, I would say, upper middle class or higher, or you stay in a minority, majority place, you're going to experience some type of oppression. So when you say that, when us and the brown people like us, which obviously anyway, that's a different conversation, but when you say it's okay, because I know that you know it's a certain struggle and plight that our people have went through. So when I say it, I don't like when people say use it as term as endearment. To me, it's a constant reminder that you might not be my brother, but you just like me. That's why it's offensive when a Bill Maher says it. When what's the actor that played on the Passion? He called it, hope you get raped by a pack of 100 niggers.
Mel Gibson?
Mel Gibson, when he says it. When people even outside our community in particular says it, Hispanics, that's why I get offended.
Well, let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
Now, with Bill Maher, the way in which he used it was tasteless and not one that was really well thought out at all, and not in the context in which I was quite referring to.
Okay.
what I was really talking about is, for instance, I have a friend back in Augusta. He's Latino, and a lot of people look at him, and honestly, even black folks, when they first meet him, while they're yo, what's up, my nigga? So he says the N-word, and he's not saying the N-word.
Where is he from?
He's originally from, he moved from New Jersey. He's Puerto Rican.
If you study the diaspora, though, and which I know, I'm not, you know it, but just for our audience, even though the Spanish tended to mix more with the African population than the English people mixed with the African population, right? And then you also had the Native American population of the islands that mixed, I think called the mestizo, basically a mixture of the people. They tend to be lighter skinned Black Americans today. But one of the first places that they were dropped off after Brazil was the Caribbean. So when I said Hispanics earlier, I'm particularly talking about people of South American and Mexican nationality. I listened to, just searching around the web, I heard quote unquote some Mexican rappers. Maybe it was El Salvadorian, I'm not sure, but man, they used the N-word more than 2 Chainz. Like, I was like, dang. Like, I mean, dog, is that popular now? I have offense to that. Because they do not trace their heritage or proclaim their heritage to be intertwined with the diaspora, even though it probably is, because there's blacks everywhere.
Yes.
But they don't use that and claim that's part of their heritage. I don't have a problem with a Puerto Rican, with the Dominican, anybody from the Caribbean or Central American area, Barbados, Belizean, whatever you want to. I don't. It's hard. And another thing, man, and I hate to use this card, but when somebody say it and they know that little, I know what you
feel what I'm saying. You know when somebody's trying to be slick and trying to be you.
I'm trying to fit in.
And when somebody's just like, yo, what's up, man?
What's up? Straight up. You can tell that. And with those people, when they say it, I feel it. It's just I feel it, but I'm okay with with your friend. If he said it around me, I would be okay with it.
And I think it goes to a larger context, though. I mean, I think, for one, the N-word, yes, in the Deep South, it was used as a racial slur against black people quite publicly, along with several others. And I think with black people saying it, the problem isn't necessarily black folks saying it, but I think the
publicization.
Yeah, thank you. It's the publication of it. It's become this thing that's, like I said, it's so mainstream that there's people in China, that's using the N-word and don't even know English.
That's true.
And it's like this word has been exported all over the world. The meaning of it, in a lot of contexts, when you go to some place where, ethnically you have some people that in India and China, in these homogenous countries where they've never even seen a black person except for maybe on TV.
Yeah.
The meaning and context of it is completely lost. So I think that's part of the bigger problem with it, is the meaning of it has been lost, and then you have the perpetuation of it within the public, where just for example, if a younger white kid went over to his black friend's house and he saw them interacting in such a way with some of the older folks, and then sometimes with the kids. I know some folks whose kids say the N-word, and he says, "Well, when in Rome, do as Romans do." What's up, man? It becomes one of those things where it's it becomes hairy, it becomes sticky, and it's one of those where I feel the line at which where to draw it.
It's blurred.
It's very blurred, and it's one of those where it requires a lot of minutia. And honestly, the people that make the argument that it shouldn't be used at all, I completely get that. I completely get the merits of that, and I feel those who say, you know what, I'm not using it in the same context as it was used in the '60s and the '70s when it was hurled against us as an insult. And I just feel it's one of those things that it's very subjective and it's very personal.
I'm with you, Dre. And well, one time when we had Hurricane Matthew and we were without power for I think a week. And your father, he was at my mother's house and all of us was over there. And I don't know how the topic came up, man, but the N-word topic came up. And your father, I wish we could have recorded that, he delivered a 20-minute monologue to the point that he was moved to tears about how hurtful it is to hear our generation say the N-word. Because it's one thing for us to think we know racism, but we go through white collar racism per se. I mean, it's some real. No, don't get me twisted. Don't misconstrue my words. It's hardcore racism out there today. But what I'm comparing it to are the 50s and the 60s that our parents experienced. You can't compare that Jim Crow South, down deep South, low country South Carolina, to what we went to today, to what we go through today. So I said all that to say this: the honest to goodness recipe for it will be, as you said earlier, to say nobody just don't use the word. But it's so ingrained in our society that it's not going away. So I just feel like this, man. And if I sound ignorant or off base or out of touch, forgive me, but my rule is this: if you're white, you should never say it. Point blank, period. It's just a word you should never use. If you're from the Caribbean or you're a Black American, it can be used, but it should be used amongst each other, and it should be used in a private type sector, not out in the public with people around. I hate when people do that. Also, if you're from another race, right? Let's say Hispanics that's been oppressed, that you understand that oppressive feeling, what it's like to be an oppressed people too, but at the same time, you're still not quote unquote my people. So let me say this, I'm finished, but in that context of it, if you have a group of friends who's okay with it, that's fine. But understand that when you come around me, you don't know me, that's not a word you should use. And to me, those are my three rules.
No, and I understand that. My only point would be though. No, and I understand that. My only point would be though, because we grew up in the deep South, we've only experienced really the societal dynamics of the deep South. One thing that my friend in particular, because me and him had this conversation one time, and the thing about him is when he's clean shaven, you would probably think he's a black dude. Once his beard grows out a little bit, you're like, oh nah, that dude's, he's Mexican. And we were talking and I asked him, I was like, yo dude, how did you end up saying it? And he pretty much told me, he's like, yo, I grew up in a, and he's a good bit older than me too. So he's got about 10 years on me.
Okay.
So he's about to hit 40 soon. But basically he said, the neighborhood I grew up with, we walked to school, had to go through a white neighborhood, and quote unquote, we all niggas. Which basically that was his way of saying it didn't matter if we were black, white, whatever. Black or whatever. If you weren't white, we were niggas. So it's like the same way they call my black friend nigga, they called me nigga. The same way they call anybody that didn't look like them, it was all nigga. It was like nigga was the one size fit all. So they all used the N-word. And that's how he explained to me. He's like, that's how they came came to eventually just be using that girl. So
That's okay. I mean, that's a great viewpoint. And you know, I want to get your opinion on this. And this kind of came from like the Boondocks episode where that happened in real life. But remember the teacher called Riley, or the student in Florida? He said nigga, not nigger.
based on a real incident, man.
It's real. It's a teacher in Florida. But I personally, at first, I was like, man, that's an ignorant argument. That's stupid. I don't care what you said, it's racist. But let me tell you something, man. I forgot where I was, but I heard somebody. And there was a person, another racist that wasn't black, and they said nigger, and it sent something through my body that I can't explain. And at first, I thought anybody who said this, they would be one of the most stupidest people that I ever came across. But I'm telling you, man, I don't know what it is, but when somebody, like you said, it's kind of going back, agreeing with you said about the context that Bill Maher used it in. When somebody says it with that hateful ER, it's a different feeling than just the average my nigga. When they put that nigger on there and with the hate behind it, I don't know what it is, but it hurts. I feel like I can feel the transmutated pain that our ancestors felt on the plantation fields, in the workforce, when they were called that. I don't know what it is, man. Do you think that's a real thing?
I mean, I think it goes back to something that it's gonna sound very trivial, and for a lot of people who aren't black, who aren't a minority, and who haven't experienced any oppression, it's gonna sound really crazy. But just hold it here with me for a second. I think a lot of it goes back to the point that black people have never been issued an apology for the racism, slavery, and discrimination that as a collective they've gone through for the hundreds of years in this country. And what it leads to, and this is what, I'm not even talking about reparation or anything, I'm just saying simply, I'm sorry. The Japanese got an sorry for the internment along with restitution during World War II.
This is facts.
Basically, what has happened is, before the inception of the nation, to 1783 when it was founded, to 1860, there was slavery within the nation. In 1860 to 1865, the nation fought a war due in large part over who should own slaves and who had the right to own slaves. In 1865, the Union government won, and with their victory, they basically determined that slavery should be abolished and should no longer be an institution enshrined in anywhere in America. But from that point on, up until about the 50s and 60s, you still had the Jim Crow South, which was segregation, which was slavery by another name in essence. You had the institution or the inception of separately equal, but which was wholly unequal. And then in the 60s, you had the Civil Rights Voting Act. You had the tearing down of these systems. And on paper, everything is, for the most part, equal, but not equal in the way it's implemented. But the most important thing is that it's there and it's equal. However, within all of this, you had a people which were enshrined as the underclass, which were subservient to others for 300 years, brutally mistreated, discriminated against in all forms of manner you could think of. It didn't just go to physical treatment, it went to housing in the early 1900s. It was business, it was schools, it was every aspect of life that you could think about. And within the context of all that, basically you go from all of that oppression to one day, yo, look, we're not doing any of this anymore. you're equal. Cool. And it's like, nah, it doesn't, the switch just doesn't flip like that. And now because somebody says, hey, I'm still having trouble with certain things, I'm still struggling with certain things in society, and you point to the fact that on paper everything is legal, everything is equal, I do feel that in a certain sense, a lot of people feel like they're crazy in essence, because it's like there's clearly some things still wrong. And you can point to the legacy of all that discrimination. It's still here today.
It's still here.
And that's why I mean, like, an apology is an acknowledgement that wrong was done. And I think a lot of people like Trevor Noah point to the fact that the South African government apologized for apartheid. He noted how, you know, for years people felt like they were crazy even after apartheid ended, but just simply because there's all these societal barriers and institutional racism that's built up.
I don't understand that. A lot of people don't get that.
They don't get it, but
Drake, you said something, man, and this is, you all can go look this up. I read an article, and maybe it was I would say 3-4 months ago, and basically the UN said that not only did the U.S. government owe Black Americans or people of African, or what do we call it, black people in America, a massive, it was like a couple billion in reparations, but they owe an apology for not only for slavery, for Jim Crow, for the institutionalized racism that we experience today on a daily basis. And man, I read the article, and man, I cried. I really cried, because only thing I could think of was, why do they hate us so much? Not that I'm looking to be loved, but it was like, man, why? You look at stories like Mary Turner. You talking about a 19-year-old black girl? I think she might have been younger than that. Her husband, basically a black guy, shot a white man in Valdosta, Georgia. In order to get back he fled, but in order to get back at the black community, they killed several black men in the community. And while her husband was being hung and set on fire, she said, why are you doing that? He didn't do that. That's not right. And this 9-month-old pregnant teenager, I want to say, I'm pretty sure she was a teenager, Mary Turner, you can look it up, Valdosta, Georgia. They hung her upside down by her ankles. They split her belly open. The baby fell out. And before I even get to the baby falling out, they tarred and feathered her, split her belly open, and in the newspaper it said they stamped the baby out, and so cries could no longer be heard. And the only thing I could think of was, what did we do to be hated so much? And man, I cried. And it's like, it's hard, because today, you have a good job. I believe I have a good job. I have white friends, and I'm not saying that I got a white. No, I'm serious. I have white people. I really don't think racism is as big as a problem as a lot of people think it is today. But it bothers me how many people don't get it. Can you not see how this has affected us? It bothers me, man.
And I think, for one, when people hear racism, they think of like the 60s and 70s. It's almost like with rape. Mm-hmm. When people hear rape, they don't think of the girl who just wanted to have fun, have a few drinks, something went somewhere she didn't quite want it to go, she was a little too intoxicated. They think of the girl who got beat over the head, the most extreme cases. And the fact of the matter is, that's not to say that either one doesn't exist. The fact of the matter is, racism that exists today, in essence, is a lot more
veiled.
It's more veiled, but it's also more class-based.
True.
It's not so much if you're black, if you're white anymore. It's, do you have money or do you not?
You're not.
And
which leads to racism. I'm not cutting you off to say this point unless you hop back in. I always say that, but it leads back to racism meaning being about race because of Jim Crow and slavery. Black people were placed at such a economic and social disadvantage that we still today remain at the bottom of the totem pole financially. But I do agree with you. I really don't think it's more so about skin base today. It's more so about your income. But you go ahead.
The thing of it is, like, a lot of racism that's experienced is, for one, if you've ever been looking for a job and you're a minority, both of us have college degrees. We have bachelor's degrees from the University of South Carolina. When I came across this, it was quite shocking, but are you aware that after 12 years of grade school, 4 years of college, getting a degree, we're no more likely to get a call back from a job application than a convicted white felon?
This is fact. This is fact.
And the racism of the day is tied to economics. And as a larger part, it's tied to class. And I really feel that the things that I've experienced, yes, I've experienced discrimination by cops. I've experienced, actually, back when Radio Shack was in Hampton, I've experienced being followed around the store for no reason other than the fact that I was black and they were scared I might steal something. Mm-hmm. And I've experienced that, but those experiences pale in comparison to the things of the 60s and the 70s. But the thing is, we shouldn't have these experiences. We shouldn't be discriminated against at all.
I mean, I'm gonna switch topics a little bit, but before I go there, I'm with you. My first foray into racism was third grade. Third grade, Miss Maynard's class. My soccer team, we won the championship or whatever. And I'm not gonna say the guy's name, but he was my bet. Like, he was literally, maybe Dexter Jenkins, and this guy was probably my second best friend. Like, you know. Yeah. And he was on my soccer team. He said, I asked him, I said, hey man, I saw you giving out invitations to your pool party. You didn't give me an invitation. And he said, man, I apologize. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't think we talked like that at the time. We was like, what, 9 years old, 8 years old. He was like, man, my daddy said, he did say this verbatim. My daddy said no niggers can get in my pool. And he didn't say it in a way like he was just repeating. I could tell he was just repeating what his father told him. And man, that it did a number on me. And you're right, it's not to the level of that my mother dealt with or your father dealt with, our grandfather dealt with, but it's also stuff that we shouldn't go through today. And it's just not right, man. But I don't know. I mean, both of us have sons, right?
Yes.
And I think we've made a giant step from the 60s. And I think it's going to be another giant step made when they get older. But at the same time, how do you balance the need to teach them about the racism or oppression suffered with the need to tell them it's no excuses? Because some of y'all may get mad at this. A large part of the African American population are still using the oppression we suffered as an excuse.